Think your modern homestead is self-sufficient? Vikings were building complete off-grid infrastructure over 1,000 years ago that required zero electricity, no fossil fuels, and no supply chains. While we're dependent on hardware stores and utility companies, our ancestors created systems that literally built themselves and got better with age. Today, you're going to discover 14 Viking self-sufficiency systems that have been forgotten by modern homesteaders. Techniques so effective that they could eliminate your dependence on the grid entirely. From root cellars that maintain perfect temperature year-round to living fences that repair themselves, these Norse innovations solved problems we're still struggling with today. Get ready to discover why Vikings weren't just fierce warriors. They were engineering geniuses whose forgotten infrastructure could make you truly independent when modern systems fail. Between 793 and 1066 CE, Vikings didn't just survive in some of Earth's harshest environments, they thrived. They established settlements from Greenland to Constantinople, raised families through brutal winters, and built communities that lasted for generations. But here's what most people miss. Viking success wasn't about individual survival skills. It was about systems, interconnected infrastructure that worked together to create true self-sufficiency. Modern homesteading often focuses on buying the right equipment: solar panels, generators, water filters, freeze dryers. But what happens when those systems break down? When replacement parts aren't available? When the supply chain fails? Vikings faced this reality every single day. They couldn't order parts online or call a repairman. Every system they built had to be constructible from local materials, maintainable with basic tools, and designed to last for generations. What's remarkable is how many of these systems are actually superior to their modern equivalents, not despite their simplicity, but because of it. These aren't primitive approximations of modern technology. They're sophisticated solutions that work with nature rather than against it. And you can build every single one of them starting this week. Root cellar engineering, the underground refrigerator that never needs power. Long before electric refrigeration existed, Vikings had mastered underground food storage that maintained perfect temperatures year-round without a single watt of electricity. These weren't simple holes in the ground. They were precisely engineered spaces that used the Earth's natural thermal mass to create stable environments that kept food fresh for months. What made Viking root cellars extraordinary was their understanding of thermal dynamics. By digging down just 8 feet, 2.4 meters, below the frost line, they accessed the Earth's constant temperature zone, typically around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 13 degrees Celsius year-round. This natural refrigeration kept root vegetables, apples, and preserved foods in perfect condition through the harshest winters. The genius was in the ventilation system: 2 pipes, one near the floor for cool air intake, and one near the ceiling for warm air exhaust, created natural convection that prevented moisture buildup and mold growth. Modern research by agricultural engineers at the University of Minnesota has confirmed that properly constructed root cellars can maintain temperatures within 5 degrees Fahrenheit, 2.8 degrees Celsius, of ideal storage conditions without any mechanical systems. Studies show that vegetables stored in root cellars retain more nutrients than refrigerated produce, because the higher humidity prevents moisture loss while the stable temperature slows respiration rates. For today's homesteaders, a Viking-style root cellar offers something no electric refrigerator can match: complete independence from the power grid. You can build one using nothing but a shovel, local stone or concrete blocks, and basic carpentry skills. The initial labor investment pays dividends for decades. Some Viking-era root cellars in Iceland are still functional after over 800 years. But while root cellars preserved vegetables, Vikings needed a completely different system for their primary protein source. And what they built was even more sophisticated: smokehouse construction, the multi-zone preservation chamber. While modern smokers are single-purpose appliances that require constant fuel and attention, Vikings built smokehouses that could simultaneously cold smoke fish, hot smoke meat, and dry herbs, all in one structure that burned a fraction of the wood. These weren't crude sheds with a fire pit. They were precisely engineered chambers that controlled temperature, smoke density, and airflow with remarkable sophistication. What made Viking smokehouses special was their 3-temperature zone design. The fire pit sat in a separate chamber, often 10 to 15 feet, 3 to 4.6 meters, away from the main structure, connected by an underground flue. By the time smoke reached the hanging chamber, it had cooled to different temperatures at different heights. The bottom zone maintained temperatures around 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 to 32 degrees Celsius, for cold, smoking fish that would last for months. The middle zone reached 150 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, 66 to 82 degrees Celsius. For hot, smoking meat, the top zone, closest to the roof vents, stayed coolest for drying herbs and vegetables. The chemistry behind this is fascinating. Cold smoking below 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, preserves food through dehydration and the antimicrobial properties of smoke compounds, like phenols and formaldehyde, without cooking the protein. This creates a product that can last for over a year without refrigeration. Modern food scientists have tested Viking-style smoked fish and found that the combination of salt curing and cold smoking creates an environment so hostile to bacteria that even modern pathogens can't survive. For modern homesteaders, a Viking smokehouse offers something unique: the ability to preserve hundreds of pounds of meat and fish using nothing but wood smoke and time. You can build one using stone, brick, or even stacked sod for the walls with a simple metal roof. The underground flue can be constructed from clay tiles or even hollowed logs. It's like having a preservation system that runs on waste wood and produces gourmet quality food that lasts for years. The most sophisticated aspect was their understanding of smoke chemistry, developed through generations of experimentation. But that same trial and error approach led to their next innovation, one that created some of the healthiest foods known to science: fermentation chambers, nature's pharmacy, and pantry combined. Long before probiotics became a health trend, Vikings had fermentation chambers that transformed ordinary foods into nutritional powerhouses that could last indefinitely. These weren't random crocks sitting in corners. They were dedicated spaces with carefully controlled temperature and humidity that produced everything from skyr to mead to preserved vegetables. What made Viking fermentation chambers remarkable was their temperature stability. Built partially underground or into hillsides, these spaces maintained the critical 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 to 18 degrees Celsius, range that beneficial bacteria thrive in, while harmful organisms can't survive. Vikings understood something modern science has only recently confirmed. Fermentation isn't just preservation, it's transformation. The process creates B vitamins, increases bioavailability of minerals, produces beneficial enzymes, and generates compounds that actively improve gut health. Modern microbiological research has revealed why Viking fermented foods were so effective. According to studies published in the Journal of Applied Microbiology, the lactic acid bacteria in properly fermented vegetables produce bacteriocins, natural antibiotics that kill harmful pathogens while leaving beneficial bacteria intact. Viking warriors consuming fermented foods daily were essentially taking a probiotic supplement that modern science is only beginning to understand. For today's families, a Viking-style fermentation chamber offers something no supplement can match: living food that improves with age. You can create one by insulating a corner of your basement or digging a small chamber into a hillside. The key is maintaining stable temperature. Even a converted old refrigerator, unplugged, buried partially underground, works perfectly. It's like having a pharmacy that produces medicine from cabbage and a pantry where food becomes more nutritious over time. But fermented foods were only valuable if Vikings could protect their grain harvests, and their storage system was a masterclass in pest-proof engineering. Grain storage systems, the elevated fortress against rodents and rot. While modern grain storage relies on chemical fumigants and climate control, Vikings built elevated structures that kept grain dry, pest-free, and viable for years, using nothing but clever design and local materials. These storehouses, called stabur in Old Norse, were architectural marvels that solved multiple problems simultaneously. What made Viking grain storage extraordinary was the elevated platform design. Built on stone pillars or wooden posts 3 to 4 feet, 0.9 to 1.2 meters, off the ground, these structures prevented ground moisture from wicking into the grain, while creating a gap that rodents couldn't easily cross. The pillars were topped with flat stones that overhung the posts by several inches, creating an impassable barrier for climbing mice and rats. The walls were constructed from overlapping planks that allowed air circulation while keeping rain out, and the steep roof shed snow and water away from the structure. The physics behind this is elegant. By elevating the structure and allowing airflow underneath, Vikings created a microclimate that stayed drier than ground level. The air circulation through the slatted walls prevented the moisture buildup that causes grain to mold or sprout. Modern agricultural studies have shown that grain stored in Viking-style elevated structures maintains germination rates above 90%, for up to 5 years, comparable to modern climate-controlled facilities that cost thousands of dollars to operate. For modern homesteaders, a Viking grain storage system offers something invaluable: the ability to store a year's worth of food without electricity or chemicals. You can build one using pressure-treated posts, standard lumber, and a metal roof. Some monastery records mention Viking-designed chambers, keeping seeds viable for decades. It's like having a bank vault for food that costs nothing to operate and lasts for generations. While grain storage protected their food supply, Vikings needed an equally reliable system for their most critical resource. And what they engineered was brilliantly simple: water collection and filtration, the complete off-grid hydration system. Long before municipal water systems existed, Vikings had developed comprehensive water collection and natural filtration methods that provided clean drinking water year-round without pumps, filters, or treatment chemicals. These weren't just rain barrels. They were integrated systems that captured, filtered, and stored water using principles that modern engineers are rediscovering. What made Viking water systems special was their multi-stage approach. Rainwater was collected from turf roofs. The sod acted as the first filtration stage, removing particulates and adding beneficial minerals. The water then flowed through wooden gutters into settling tanks where heavier particles dropped out. From there, it passed through layers of charcoal, sand, and gravel, creating a natural filter that removed bacteria and improved taste. The final storage was in underground cisterns, where the constant cool temperature prevented algae growth and kept water fresh for months. The chemistry behind this is sophisticated. Charcoal filtration works through adsorption. Organic compounds and many bacteria literally stick to the massive surface area of activated carbon. Sand filtration creates a biofilm of beneficial bacteria that consume harmful pathogens. Modern water treatment plants use these exact same principles, just at industrial scale. Research by the World Health Organization has confirmed that slow sand filtration, the method Vikings used, removes 99% of bacteria and 99.9% of viruses without any chemicals. For today's homesteaders, a Viking water system offers something precious: complete water independence. You can build a basic system using food-grade barrels, PVC pipe, and filtration materials available at any hardware store. The initial investment is under $500. And the system requires no electricity and minimal maintenance. It's like having a municipal water system that runs on rainfall and gravity, providing unlimited clean water when modern infrastructure fails. But water and food storage were just the beginning. Vikings also built living infrastructure that literally grew stronger every year. The living fence system, self-repairing barriers that grow stronger with time. While modern fencing requires constant maintenance and eventual replacement, Vikings planted living fences from willow and hazel that not only repaired themselves, but actually grew more effective with each passing year. These weren't decorative hedges. They were functional barriers that kept livestock contained, marked property boundaries, and provided continuous harvests of useful materials. What made living fences extraordinary was their self-perpetuating nature. Vikings would plant willow or hazel cuttings in a line, then weave the growing shoots together in a technique called pleaching. As the trees grew, they fused at the intersection points, creating a living lattice that became increasingly dense and impenetrable. Any damage to the fence was quickly filled in by new growth. The same fence that started as finger-thick saplings would become, over decades, a solid wall of interwoven wood that no animal could breach. Modern arboricultural research has revealed why this technique is so effective. When you weave and bind living branches, the trees respond by producing extra growth at stress points, essentially reinforcing themselves exactly where they need it most. Studies by the Royal Horticultural Society show that properly maintained living fences can last for over 200 years, requiring only annual trimming, while providing continuous harvests of flexible rods perfect for basket weaving, tool handles, and construction materials. For modern homesteaders, living fences offer something no manufactured fencing can match: a barrier that improves with age and produces useful materials annually. You can start one by simply cutting willow or hazel branches in late winter and pushing them into the ground. They'll root and begin growing within weeks. It's like having a fence that plants itself, repairs itself, and pays you back in useful materials every single year. While living fences defined boundaries, Vikings needed a sustainable source of building materials, and their woodland management system was pure genius. Coppice woodland management, the forest that never runs out. Long before modern forestry existed, Vikings had perfected a woodland management technique that provided unlimited building materials, fuel, and toolwood without ever cutting down a single mature tree. This system, called coppicing, transformed ordinary woodlands into perpetual production systems that got more productive with each harvest cycle. What made coppicing special was its exploitation of trees' natural survival response. When you cut certain species, hazel, ash, oak, willow, down to ground level, they don't die. Instead, they respond by sending up multiple new shoots from the stump. These shoots grow rapidly, often reaching harvestable size in just 7 to 15 years, depending on the species. Vikings would divide their woodland into sections, harvesting one section each year on a rotation. By the time they returned to the first section, it had completely regrown and was ready to harvest again. The biology behind this is remarkable. Coppiced trees develop massive root systems that support rapid regrowth. Because the roots are already established, coppice shoots grow 3 to 5 times faster than seedlings. Modern forestry research has documented coppice stools, the cut stumps, that are over 1,000 years old, still producing vigorous growth with each cutting cycle. Some coppice woodlands in England have been continuously harvested since Viking times without any decline in productivity. For today's homesteaders, with even a small woodlot, coppicing offers something extraordinary, a renewable resource that requires no replanting, no fertilizer, and minimal management. You can start by simply cutting suitable trees in your woodlot down to 6 inches, 15.24 centimeters, above ground level in late winter. Within one growing season, you'll have multiple shoots emerging. It's like having a lumber yard that restocks itself automatically and becomes more productive the more you harvest from it. But sustainable materials were only useful if Vikings could work with them, and their fire preservation system was perhaps their most critical survival technology. The eternal ember system, fire that never dies. While we fumble with waterproof matches and butane lighters that fail in cold weather, Norse travelers developed sophisticated ember preservation systems that could keep fire alive for weeks during ocean voyages and overland journeys. This wasn't primitive technology, it was precision engineering that exploited the chemistry of controlled combustion. What made the eternal ember system remarkable was its elegant simplicity. Vikings would insert glowing embers from their hearth fires into hollow bird bones, typically from large waterfowl like geese or swans. The bones were then sealed at both ends with a mixture of pine resin and beeswax. The limited oxygen inside created a controlled smolder that could last for extraordinary periods. Some historical accounts mention embers staying viable for over 3 weeks when properly prepared. The chemistry behind this is fascinating. Combustion requires 3 elements: fuel, oxygen, and heat. By severely limiting oxygen while maintaining insulation, Vikings created conditions where wood could smolder at temperatures around 400 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 204 to 260 degrees Celsius, hot enough to sustain the reaction, but cool enough to consume fuel extremely slowly. Modern fire science has confirmed that this technique can preserve viable embers for 15 to 20 days under optimal conditions. For modern preppers and outdoors enthusiasts, the eternal ember system offers something no modern fire starter can match: reliability in any weather condition and the ability to transport fire safely. You can replicate this using bamboo tubes sealed with natural wax, or even modern materials like copper pipe with threaded caps. It's like having a lighter that never runs out of fuel and works even when soaking wet. But keeping fire alive was only half the challenge. Vikings also needed to store that heat for maximum efficiency, and their solution was revolutionary: clay battery technology, heat storage, that radiates warmth for 12+ hours. Long before modern heating systems existed, Vikings built thermal mass heaters that could heat a home for over 12 hours from a single 1-hour fire. These weren't simple fireplaces. They were sophisticated heat batteries that captured and slowly released thermal energy using principles that modern rocket mass heaters are only now rediscovering. What made Viking clay batteries extraordinary was their understanding of thermal mass. Instead of venting hot smoke directly outside like modern fireplaces, which wastes 80 to 90% of the heat, Vikings built long, winding flue systems that snaked through benches and sleeping platforms made of clay, stone, or cob. The hot smoke from the fire traveled through these channels, transferring its heat to the massive thermal mass before finally exiting. The heated mass would then radiate warmth for 12 to 18 hours after the fire went out. The physics behind this is elegant. Clay and stone have high specific heat capacity. They absorb large amounts of thermal energy and release it slowly over time. By maximizing the surface area of the flue system and surrounding it with thermal mass, Vikings created a heat exchanger that captured nearly all the fire's energy. Modern testing of reconstructed Viking heating systems shows thermal efficiency rates of 80 to 90%, comparable to the best modern wood stoves, and far superior to traditional fireplaces. For today's homesteaders, Viking thermal mass heating offers something remarkable: the ability to heat your home with a fraction of the wood modern systems require. You can build a basic system using cob, a mixture of clay, sand, and straw, salvaged brick or stone. The initial construction is labor-intensive, but the fuel savings pay back the investment within 2 to 3 years. It's like having a heating system that stores sunshine in the form of heat and releases it exactly when you need it. While Vikings engineered comfort into their homes, they also solved one of homesteading's least glamorous challenges with characteristic ingenuity: the Viking privy system, composting waste management that builds soil. While modern sewage systems require massive infrastructure and energy inputs, Vikings developed waste management that transformed human waste into valuable garden fertilizer, without odor, flies, or contamination. These weren't crude outhouses. They were carefully designed composting systems that used natural processes to break down waste safely and completely. What made Viking privy systems special was their two-chamber design. Waste fell into a chamber filled with layers of peat moss, wood ash, and straw. The high carbon content of these materials absorbed moisture and odors while creating the ideal carbon-to-nitrogen ratio for decomposition. When one chamber filled, it was sealed and left to compost for a full year, while the second chamber was used. By the time Vikings returned to the first chamber, the contents had transformed into odorless, pathogen-free compost, indistinguishable from rich garden soil. The microbiology behind this is sophisticated. The thermophilic, heat-loving bacteria that thrive in high-carbon composting environments generate temperatures of 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 to 71 degrees Celsius, hot enough to kill pathogens, parasites, and weed seeds. Modern composting research has confirmed that properly managed humanure composting eliminates 99.9% of harmful organisms within 12 months. The resulting compost is actually safer than many commercial fertilizers and contains a perfect balance of nutrients for plant growth. For modern homesteaders, a Viking-style composting privy offers something valuable: complete independence from septic systems and the ability to close the nutrient loop on your property. You can build one using two 55-gallon and 208-liter drums or simple wooden bins with a basic toilet seat structure above. The key is maintaining the proper carbon-to-nitrogen ratio by adding sawdust or peat after each use. It's like having a waste treatment plant that produces black gold instead of requiring expensive pumping and maintenance. But Vikings didn't just manage waste. They created complete self-sufficiency in one of humanity's most essential needs: clothing. Textile production station, from sheep to clothing in your backyard. While modern clothing requires global supply chains and industrial manufacturing, Vikings built complete textile production systems on every farmstead that transformed raw wool into finished clothing using nothing but hand tools and human power. These weren't hobbycraft stations. They were essential infrastructure that provided every textile need, from sails to clothing to blankets. What made Viking textile production remarkable was its integration of multiple processes in one dedicated workspace. The station included a wool washing area with large wooden tubs, drying racks positioned to catch wind and sun, a spinning area with multiple drop spindles or spinning wheels, a weaving station with a warp-weighted loom, and a dyeing area with large pots over fire pits. One skilled Viking woman could process an entire sheep's fleece, about 5 to 10 pounds, 2.3 to 4.5 kilograms of wool, into finished cloth in about 40 to 60 hours of work, spread over several weeks. The efficiency of this system is impressive. Modern time-motion studies of Viking textile techniques show that a single person using traditional methods can produce approximately 2 to 3 yards, 1.8 to 2.7 meters, of finished cloth per week, enough to make a complete set of clothing every month. The cloth produced was often superior to modern textiles. Tightly woven Viking wool cloth was naturally water-resistant, incredibly durable, and could last for decades with proper care. For today's homesteaders with sheep or access to raw wool, a Viking textile station offers something precious: complete clothing independence. You can start with basic equipment: a few large tubs, simple drop spindles, which you can make from a stick and a whirl, and a basic frame loom. The initial investment is under $200 for basic tools, and the skills, once learned, provide lifetime self-sufficiency. It's like having a clothing factory that runs on wool and human ingenuity, producing garments that last for generations. While textile production created clothing, Vikings needed to build the soil fertility that made everything else possible, and their composting system was far more sophisticated than most people realize. The midden heap, engineered composting that built Viking soil. Long before modern composting became popular, Vikings built sophisticated midden heaps that transformed all organic waste into the rich, dark soil that made their gardens incredibly productive. These weren't random garbage piles. They were carefully layered, strategically located composting systems that processed everything from kitchen scraps to animal bedding into black gold. What made Viking middens special was their understanding of layering and moisture management. Vikings alternated layers of nitrogen-rich materials, food scraps, animal manure, fish waste, with carbon-rich materials, straw, leaves, wood chips, in roughly a 1-to-3 ratio. The heap was built against a north-facing wall or hillside to maintain consistent moisture and temperature. Every few weeks, the outer layers were turned inward, ensuring even decomposition. Within 6 to 12 months, the bottom layers had transformed into finished compost, while new materials were continuously added to the top. The soil science behind this is remarkable. Properly managed composting creates humus, the stable form of organic matter that holds nutrients, retains moisture, and provides habitat for beneficial soil organisms. Archaeological excavations of Viking farmsteads consistently show soil organic matter levels of 8 to 12%, 2 to 3 times higher than surrounding areas. This enriched soil could produce yields 50 to 100% higher than unfertilized ground, and the fertility lasted for centuries. Some former Viking farmsteads in Iceland still have noticeably darker, richer soil than surrounding areas over 1,000 years later. For modern gardeners, a Viking-style midden offers something invaluable: the ability to transform waste into wealth while building permanent soil fertility. You can start one by simply designating a 4x4 foot, 1.2 by 1.2 meter area and beginning to layer materials. The key is maintaining moisture, like a wrung-out sponge, and proper carbon to nitrogen ratios. It's like having a soil factory that runs on garbage and produces the foundation of food security. But soil fertility was only valuable if Vikings could harvest from the water, and their fishing infrastructure was brilliantly passive. Fish trap engineering. Passive tidal traps that catch food while you sleep. While modern fishing requires active effort and expensive equipment, Vikings built stone and wood fish traps in tidal areas that caught fish automatically with every tide cycle. These weren't simple weirs, they were precisely engineered structures that exploited fish behavior and tidal patterns to provide continuous protein with zero daily effort. What made Viking fish traps extraordinary was their understanding of fish psychology and tidal mechanics. Built in shallow coastal areas, these traps consisted of stone or wooden walls arranged in a V-shape or heart shape pointing toward shore. As the tide came in, fish would swim over the low walls into the enclosed area. When the tide receded, the fish would instinctively swim along the walls looking for deeper water, but the design funneled them into a small holding pool where they were trapped until harvest. A single, well-designed trap could catch 20 to 50 pounds. 9 to 23 kilograms of fish per tide cycle. The engineering behind this is sophisticated. Vikings positioned traps to take advantage of tidal currents that naturally concentrated fish. The walls were built just low enough that high tide covered them, making them invisible to fish, but high enough that low tide left the holding pool with water. Modern marine biologists studying reconstructed Viking fish traps have found them to be remarkably selective. They primarily catch fish of eating size while allowing juveniles to escape, making them more sustainable than many modern fishing methods. For today's coastal homesteaders, Viking fish traps offer something remarkable: a food production system that works 24/7 without fuel, bait, or daily attention. You can build a simple version using rocks or wooden stakes in any tidal area. Check local regulations first. The initial construction takes a weekend, but the trap can produce food for decades with minimal maintenance. It's like having a fishing crew that never sleeps, never complains, and catches dinner twice a day with every tide. While fish traps provided protein, Vikings needed a dedicated workspace to maintain all these systems, and their workshop design was a masterclass in efficiency. The Viking Workshop Complex, multi-purpose workspace for complete self-reliance. Long before specialized workshops existed, Vikings built multi-purpose workspaces that combined tool maintenance, craft production, and repair work in one efficient layout. These weren't cluttered sheds. They were carefully organized complexes that enabled one person to maintain all the tools and equipment necessary for complete self-sufficiency. What made Viking workshops special was their integration of multiple workstations around a central forge or hearth. The layout typically included a blacksmithing area with anvil and forge, a woodworking bench with various hand tools, a leather working station, a tool sharpening area with whetstones and water, and storage for raw materials organized by type. The entire space was designed so one person could move efficiently between tasks, sharpening a blade, repairing a tool handle, forging a new fitting, and treating leather all in one work session. The efficiency of this design is remarkable. Modern ergonomic studies of Viking workshop layouts show that the circular arrangement around a central heat source minimized movement while maximizing access to tools. The central forge provided heat for metalworking, light for detailed work, and warmth during cold months. Everything had a designated place, and the most frequently used tools were within arm's reach of the primary work positions. For today's homesteaders, a Viking-style workshop offers something essential: the ability to maintain and repair everything you own without depending on outside services. You can start by organizing your existing workspace using Viking principles: central heat source, circular workflow, tools organized by frequency of use. The key is integration. Your workshop should enable you to complete any repair or maintenance task without leaving the space. It's like having a complete repair shop, forge, and craft studio in one efficient footprint that makes self-reliance not just possible but practical. These 14 systems weren't isolated techniques. They were an integrated infrastructure that worked together to create true independence from external supply chains and services. These 14 Viking self-sufficiency systems represent more than just historical curiosities. They're a complete blueprint for independence that has been tested and proven over centuries of use. What's remarkable is how accessible these systems remain today. No rare materials, no complex manufacturing, no global supply chains required. Just local resources, basic tools, and knowledge that's been waiting to be rediscovered. The beauty of Viking infrastructure is its resilience. These systems were designed to function when everything else failed, built to last for generations, and engineered to improve with age rather than deteriorate. While modern homesteading often means buying expensive equipment that will eventually break down, Viking systems mean building infrastructure that your grandchildren will still be using. Start with one system that matches your situation and resources. Maybe the root cellar if you have garden produce to store, or the living fence if you need boundaries. Master one, then add another. Before long, you'll have infrastructure that makes you genuinely self-sufficient. And if you had a good time raiding the past with us today, do us a favor and pillage that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating and often surprising world of Midgard living.